I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
Why would John Deere want to leave here and start manufacturing in Mexico, Tom?
Save money. Cheaper in
Labor
Mexico.
costs is cheaper.
Sure.
So why not have a country that's going to make it affordable for them to do it here?
John Deere, long regarded as an icon of American farming, recently sparked intense controversy after announcing it would relocate a portion of its manufacturing to Mexico. The move poses a serious challenge to Trump's America First agenda, which he once vowed to defend uncompromisingly. Almost immediately, he lashed out with a threat to slap a 200% tariff on any Deere equipment produced south of the border. They're hurting our farmers, they're hurting our factories, and if they go ahead with this, they'll be hit with a 200% tariff on anything they make across the border. They think they can just move production and it'll be fine. But the reality behind the company's decision is far more complex than Trump suggests. The implications for the entire U.S. agricultural supply chain could be far-reaching. To Trump, this outsourcing is nothing short of a betrayal. A brand so rooted in American soil, now seeking greater profits abroad, was, in his view, unacceptable. So his response wasn't unexpected. But John Deere didn't back down. The company stood firm, arguing that the shift was essential for staying competitive in a fast-changing global economy. While Trump tried to pressure them through rhetoric and threats, Deere made it clear that American businesses don't have to be confined by protectionist walls to thrive globally. With manufacturing expenses steadily climbing in the U.S., the move to Mexico became more a matter of survival than strategy. American labor costs are roughly double those in Mexico, and if Deere intends to remain a global player, expanding into developing economies is no longer optional. It's crucial. Demand for farming machinery is surging in places like Brazil, India, and China. If Deere fails to respond, it risks falling behind. That's why Trump's aggressive tariffs don't just target manufacturing. They could cripple American companies trying to compete internationally. But there's more at stake than tariffs and trade disputes. This conflict highlights a much bigger shift occurring in agriculture. Technology and automation are quickly replacing traditional farm labor. GPS-guided tractors, AI-managed harvesting, and drones monitoring crops aren't science fiction anymore. They're standard practice. As innovation rewrites the rules of farming, Trump's approach feels increasingly outdated, stuck in an era where heavy industry defined strength. Deere, meanwhile, has shown it's willing to evolve, even if that means clashing with political pressure. Will this force Trump to rethink his trade playbook? That's still unclear. But what's undeniable is that if Deere emerges from this victorious, other U.S. corporations might follow, and insulating domestic production could become even more difficult. Trump's reaction was intense. They're going to get hit with huge tariffs, which leaves two options. They don't build the factory at all, which is still possible, or they build it, but they build it here. Ideally, in states like Michigan or South Carolina, where our auto industry is strong. But we're not going to sit by and let this happen. What we're witnessing is more than a dispute between a president and a company. It's a reflection of an American economy confronting a tipping point. If Trump wins, companies may face tighter controls under nationalist policies. If Deere wins, it could mark the beginning of a major shift in how U.S. industry operates in a globalized world. The price of agricultural equipment has soared. Buying this kind of machinery is becoming nearly impossible for small producers. And the final burden? It lands squarely on the American consumer. With food prices climbing under the weight of trade barriers, lower-income families are the first to suffer. This trade clash won't just affect businesses and customs paperwork. It will impact dinner tables across the nation. Tariffs of 125%, retaliatory measures of 84%, and now close to $1 trillion in U.S. government bonds is at risk of being unleashed in what economists are calling a financial time bomb. This isn't just about economics anymore. It's a battle for dominance between two global giants, and your bank account is the front line. Trump recently raised tariffs on Chinese imports to an extraordinary 125%, the highest rate since the trade war began. This wasn't a minor policy tweak. It signaled a complete shift from strategic containment to all-out economic aggression. And the consequences? They're not just hitting steel or machinery anymore. Everyday consumer goods are now in the crosshairs. From home electronics to auto parts, American companies, especially smaller ones, are facing skyrocketing costs. For everyday people, the price surge is already noticeable, from kitchen appliances to mobile phones. At first glance, it might seem like these moves are aimed squarely at Beijing. But the economic shockwaves are rattling American households just as hard. In retaliation, China announced it would raise tariffs on key U.S. exports, soybeans, beef, cars, electronics, from 34% to a staggering 84%. They weren't subtle about their target, U.S. farmers and export-driven sectors. But what truly alarmed financial analysts wasn't just the tariff hike. It was the looming threat of something far more dangerous, a potential dump of between $900 billion and $1.1 trillion in U.S. Treasury bonds, described by some as a financial nuclear weapon. China holds the second-largest share of America's national debt. If Beijing decides to flood the market with U.S. bonds, the fallout could extend far beyond Wall Street. Every mortgage, every credit card, every car loan in the country could feel the effects. This isn't an abstract threat anymore. It's real, and it's personal. A massive bond sell-off would send prices into freefall and drive interest rates through the roof. Borrowing would suddenly cost a lot more. And that hits families hard. Higher home loans, steeper auto financing, rising credit card debt. But wages remain stagnant. And it doesn't stop with borrowers. As China reduces its U.S. bond holdings, the dollar weakens, and the price of imported goods rises sharply. Gas, packaged foods, electronics, they all get more expensive. Just in the past week, the yield on the 10-year Treasury jumped 0.4%, enough to rattle the real estate market and spook Wall Street. But China doesn't walk away unscathed. If it unloads all its bonds, the remaining ones lose value. And since treasuries make up a huge portion of China's reserves, such a move would essentially mean burning billions in their own wealth. The financial ties between both countries are too deeply entrenched to sever cleanly. Economists call this a lose-lose scenario. Neither side escapes unharmed. And perhaps that's why China seems to be pivoting toward a slower, more calculated strategy, gradually stepping away from the US dollar, quietly trimming its bond portfolio, and most critically, building an alternative financial infrastructure anchored by its digital currency, the ECNY. According to unofficial reports, by the first quarter of 2025, China's digital yuan had already processed over 1.88 trillion yuan in global transactions, spanning more than 200 countries and regions. No need for SWIFT. No US dollar involved. This is no longer a test run. If the numbers hold true, we may be watching the start of a financial evolution, one that slowly unravels the American-dominated global monetary system. It's not just a payment option. It's China's boldest attempt yet to redefine the very nature of currency. The Dow Jones plunged over 1,100 points. Canada's patience wore thin, and public trust began to erode. President Trump decided to delay tariffs for much of the world, yet somehow forgot his closest ally. Canada watched this unfold and asked, wait a minute, was that really necessary? Doug Ford, Ontario's premier, often referred to as the business world's human loudspeaker, was stunned. So much so, he appeared on CNN to voice his frustration. We weren't even included in that circle. We're each other's #1 trading partner. This needs to be resolved. People need certainty. A harsh moment, and still, silence from the White House. Japan, South Korea, and the European Union all received temporary relief from tariffs. But Canada remained saddled with a 25% levy. Ford, clearly frustrated, responded. Putting a tariff on Canada is like taxing American citizens directly. That's the last thing anyone wants. What began as an international policy issue quickly trickled down to every fridge in North America. Ford warned that the tariffs were hitting essential sectors, particularly steel and aluminum, hard. Canada imports over $6.5 billion in steel each year, but doesn't manufacture its own steel beams. The multi-billion-dollar canned beverage industry, which relies heavily on aluminum from the U.S., is now under immense strain. This isn't working for either side, Ford said. We had something stable. Why shake it up? Let's just focus on building something stronger. With rising costs choking supply chains, especially for small cross-border businesses, the pressure mounted. Canada didn't remain passive. Ford made it crystal clear. We didn't start this conflict, but if it continues, we're ready to stand up for ourselves. Despite the rising tension, Canada still extended a hand. Their message to Washington was measured. If there's a mutual understanding, if there's assurance that these tariffs will also be lifted for Canada, then yes, we're willing to move first. But we need guarantees. No one wants to be ghosted in a trade dispute. But if the other side goes radio silent, patience will eventually run out. Meanwhile, another consequence was quietly unfolding. Tourism was collapsing. The number of Canadians flying to the U.S. has dropped dramatically, said Ford. There are fewer flights, and many people are flat out refusing to travel. Fresh data confirmed it. Cross-border air travel between Canada and the United States was crumbling. According to aviation analytics firm OAG, flight bookings had plunged more than 70%. Airline capacity was slashed through October 2025, with the biggest cuts hitting during peak travel months, July and August. Trips from Canada to the U.S. were down over 70% year over year. Discontent was growing, especially in eastern provinces. One traveler said, "My one trip won't make a difference, but I don't feel comfortable with the current political climate. I'm avoiding places like Florida and Las Vegas altogether." Airlines and hotels are bracing for massive revenue losses. Tourism is uniquely vulnerable to emotional shifts. A broken trade deal can cancel thousands of flights overnight. And the fallout isn't limited to Canada. Mexico is also being sidelined in trade negotiations. Ford warned that if things don't shift soon, the ripple effects could damage the entire North American economy. So the big question remains. Is this economic alliance turning into a quiet group chat no one answers? Or is it just a tactical retreat before a new strategy emerges? Then came the Ford Motor Company bombshell. 2,000 American jobs gone. $50 billion redirected. No press conference, no warning, just one decision. Ford was pulling out of U.S. soil. Was it betrayal, or the only way to stay alive? For more than a century, Ford's roots ran deep through Michigan. Wayne was its heartbeat. The company symbolized American labor, grit, and pride. But then the announcement hit. Production of models like the Focus and C-Max, along with most electric vehicle lines, was moving overseas. The factories would go dark. The assembly lines would stop. The promises to stay? Gone. Why? Because Ford simply couldn't withstand the storm. Steel prices were up. Aluminum costs had skyrocketed. Lithium, critical for EVs, surged over 300% between 2020 and 2024. And with 80% of global lithium refining concentrated in China, American tariffs came at a cost. Ford paid it. Building electric vehicles in the U.S. became 25% more expensive than doing so abroad. Ford found itself cornered. But this isn't just about Ford versus other automakers. It's Ford versus an entirely new industrial model. Tesla isn't just a car brand, it's an integrated ecosystem. From mining lithium to training AI for autonomous driving, everything is done in-house. No dealers, no red tape. While Ford wrestles with unions and legacy systems, Tesla delivers EVs straight to customers' driveways. One Ford executive admitted it bluntly. "We're not competing with car companies anymore. We're up against a production civilization." Ford responded with force. Enter Project T3, a $50 billion reinvention. A bold alliance with BMW for solid-state battery innovation. Assembly lines run 90% by robots. Electric vehicles that run 1 million miles and charge in minutes. No dealerships. Just tap, order, and drive. Ford isn't building cars anymore. It's building a blueprint for the future. The backlash was swift. Ford was labeled a traitor. Within hours, political fire erupted. Trump, predictably, lashed out. They turned their backs on the workers who made them. Proposals surfaced: punitive tariffs, federal blacklists, canceled contracts. But Ford didn't blink. No statement, no apology. Just a single line from CEO Jim Farley. Do you want to lose 2,000 jobs today or 20,000 5 years from now? It was harsh, but honest. Ford didn't run. It adapted. It chose survival over symbolism. What some call betrayal today may end up being the most rational form of patriotism tomorrow. Adapt or vanish. That's the choice Ford made. They understood one reality. No business can lead tomorrow by clinging to yesterday. Governments can delay change. Markets don't. While Trump shouts, Ford is rewriting the rulebook. No more wrench turners. No more loyalty to political whims. They're building facilities where machines outnumber humans. Hiring coders, not assembly workers. Delivering cars the same way Amazon delivers groceries. If Ford succeeds, it becomes the model for post-oil American industry. If it fails, it'll serve as a warning to every giant stuck in the old economy. Don't blink. Ford may be the first, but they won't be the last. The struggle facing American manufacturers today is a fight to survive. Old-school protections are no longer enough against fast-moving tech and global competition. Ford now stands at a fork in the road. Will they embrace innovation or go down clinging to the past? And if they get it right, maybe, just maybe, America's auto industry can not only survive, but lead the electric age. As the battle over the future of American manufacturing intensifies, another storm is brewing, this time inside the very heart of the Republican Party. Tensions are boiling over in the MAGA movement, with deep cracks showing between lawmakers. Debates over the national budget, taxation, and foreign policy are reaching a tipping point. Many within the party are now asking a simple but powerful question. Where is this all going? Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, nicknamed MAGA Mike, is struggling to bring unity. His efforts to pass a budget deal have run into fierce opposition, even from his own ranks. Some accuse party leaders of bending the rules by using procedural shortcuts to sidestep traditional legislative paths. The response? Outrage. That's not legal, one congressman fumed. At least 15 Republican representatives have vowed to vote against the proposal. Another dozen are on the fence. It's becoming increasingly clear. Without major changes, this plan is doomed. Veteran figures in the movement, like Andy Biggs and Chip Roy, have publicly slammed the proposal, calling it weak, ineffective, and utterly insufficient in addressing America's exploding deficit. This isn't just a personal failure for Mike Johnson. It's a broader sign that the MAGA coalition is fracturing when it comes to economic strategy. What's on the table? A mere $4 billion in spending cuts stretched out over a decade. But America is running a structural deficit of over $2.25 trillion per year. That's not going to fix anything, lawmakers argue. And we've been given no guarantees. There's no trust in this process. Some are flat out rejecting the bill as it stands. MAGA legislators are demanding cuts of $1.5 trillion, not pocket change. The massive gap between these figures is igniting a fierce internal debate, exposing a critical lack of unity over how to tackle spending and taxation. When the economic future of the country hangs in the balance, internal discord like this spells trouble. Meanwhile, Trump continues pushing hardline tariff policies against nations like China. But global partners, including the European Union and Japan, are raising concerns over the lack of consistency in U.S. trade policy. These sudden decisions, such as delaying tariffs one week only to reimpose them the next, are sending mixed signals not only abroad but at home. It's creating confusion even among allies. For many, the question is no longer about strategy. It's about leadership. Can this administration or this party deliver the long-term reforms needed to stabilize the economy? We elected this government to fix the economy and rebalance our trade relationships, one lawmaker stated. And yet, here we are. Nothing has happened. At some point, if you're in Congress, you should have to pass a math test. The Senate budget doesn't make sense. It'll bury us in more debt and inflation. I can't vote for that. Voices like Chip Roy and Ralph Norman are growing louder, demanding bold, permanent solutions to the national debt crisis, not more short-term fixes and symbolic gestures. This is a make-or-break moment for the MAGA movement. Either they present a coherent economic vision, or the cracks will widen beyond repair. The American public is watching. They were promised action on inflation, lower costs of living, and stronger leadership from day one. But those promises remain largely unfulfilled. This is no longer just about policies. It's about trust. And that trust is rapidly fading. Trump's economic decisions have ignited frustration, not only among the party faithful, but also among average Americans. Voters are demanding results, not slogans. Concrete changes, not political theater. And while this internal chaos continues, the economy sits on a knife's edge. Erratic foreign policies, unresolved budget battles, and infighting among lawmakers are pushing the U.S. closer to a dangerous tipping point. The worst part? It's not politicians who suffer the consequences. It's working families. It's small businesses. It's entrepreneurs. It's people trying to survive in a system that feels broken and unpredictable. This isn't just instability. It's a rising anxiety, a quiet panic creeping across the country, in a time when the margin for error has all but disappeared.